Right now, as you listen to these words, notice what your mind is doing. Is it already jumping ahead, wondering if this will actually help? Is it reviewing something that happened earlier today? Maybe it's planning what you need to do tomorrow, or replaying a conversation from last week. This is the mind that keeps you awake at night. The mind that turns simple decisions into endless debates. The mind that can take a peaceful moment and fill it with worry, regret, or anxiety in seconds. You might think this restless mind is just part of modern life, that people in ancient times had it easier. But here's something that might surprise you. Over 500 years ago, monks in mountain monasteries struggled with the exact same racing thoughts you have right now. They lay awake at night, minds spinning. They sat in meditation halls, unable to find peace. They wrestled with guilt, fear, and doubt, just like you do. The difference is, they found a way out. These ancient Zen masters discovered something profound about the nature of thought itself. They learned that the problem isn't that you think too much. The problem is that you've been taught to fight your thoughts, and that fight is what keeps you trapped. Tonight, I want to share their discoveries with you through stories that will change how you see your own mind. These aren't just tales from long ago. They're mirrors that reflect your own inner experience. And as you listen, you'll start to recognize yourself in these ancient struggles. The first story takes us to 9th century China, to a young monk whose mind was so restless that his teacher gave him the most unexpected assignment. What happened next reveals the first secret about why fighting your thoughts only makes them stronger, and what you can do instead. In ancient China, during the Tang dynasty, there lived a young monk named Huineng, who had traveled hundreds of miles to study at the famous Shaolin Temple. He had given up everything, his family, his possessions, even his old name, all to find inner peace. But there was one problem. His mind was wilder than a storm at sea. During meditation, while other monks sat like still mountains, Huineng's thoughts raced like rabbits fleeing a fire. Am I sitting correctly? Should my back be straighter? That monk next to me looks so peaceful. What's wrong with me? Maybe I'm not meant for this. Maybe I should go home. But what will people think? What if I'm wasting my life? Day after day, this mental tornado tormented him. He began to think he was the worst student the monastery had ever seen. Sound familiar? How many times have you laid in bed, exhausted, but your mind keeps running through the same loop? How often do you catch yourself thinking about thinking, worrying about worrying? One morning, the headmaster, Zen Master Dogen, called Huineng to his chambers. Expecting to be expelled, Huineng entered with his head down. But instead of scolding him, the master handed him a cup of water and said something that seemed completely insane. I want you to carry this cup of water to the top of the mountain and back. But here's the task. You must spill every single drop along the way. You are forbidden from keeping any water in the cup. Huineng was confused. Master, wouldn't it be better to try not to spill the water? The old master's eyes twinkled. "Young monk, you've been trying not to spill your thoughts for months. How has that worked for you? Think about this for a moment. How much energy do you spend each day trying not to think certain thoughts? Trying not to worry about money, or relationships, or health, or the future? You probably don't even realize you're doing it, but you're constantly fighting an internal battle, trying to keep your mental cup from spilling. This is where the Zen teaching reveals itself. In Zen Buddhism, there's a principle called Wu Wei, often translated as non-action, but it's deeper than that. It means flowing with life instead of against it, like water finding its natural course down a mountain. The water doesn't struggle or force its way, it simply follows the path of least resistance. Your thoughts are like that water. The more desperately you try to control them, the more chaotic they become. Every time you tell yourself, "Don't think about that embarrassing thing you did last week," what happens? You think about it even more intensely. It's like telling someone not to think about a pink elephant. It's suddenly that's all they can see. Huineng spent the entire day walking up and down the mountain, deliberately spilling water. At first, it felt wrong, wasteful, against every instinct he had. His whole life, he'd been taught to be careful, to preserve, to control. But as the hours passed, something remarkable happened. When he stopped fighting to keep the water in the cup, he could finally enjoy the walk. He noticed the birds singing songs he'd never heard before. He felt the mountain breeze cool his skin. He smelled the pine trees and wild flowers. The sunlight dancing through the leaves caught his attention in a way it never had when his mind was busy trying to do everything perfectly. When was the last time you were fully present like that? When did you last notice the world around you without your mind pulling you into yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's anxieties? Most of us live our entire lives like Huineng before his lesson, so focused on not spilling that we miss the beauty of the journey. When Huineng returned to the monastery, the master asked, "How do you feel?" "Peaceful," Huineng said, genuinely surprised. "But I don't understand. I did everything wrong." "No," smiled the master, "you did everything right. You learned that the goal is not to stop the water from flowing, it's to stop being afraid of the spillage." This is the first great insight of Zen. Your thoughts are not the problem. Your fear of your thoughts is the problem. Right now, you probably have thoughts you consider good thoughts and bad thoughts, peaceful thoughts and anxious thoughts. But what if all thoughts are just mental events, no different from clouds passing through the sky? The cloud doesn't ask permission to appear. The cloud doesn't worry about whether it's the right shape or whether it belongs in the sky. It simply forms, drifts across your awareness, and dissolves. Your thoughts could work the same way if you stopped grabbing onto them. But here's what Huineng discovered next, and this might be the most important part for you. When he stopped fighting his thoughts about being a bad student, something unexpected happened. The thoughts didn't disappear, they just lost their emotional charge. He could have the thought, "I'm terrible at meditation," and instead of spiraling into shame and self-doubt, he'd simply notice, "Oh, there's that familiar thought again." This is what Zen masters call the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is unavoidable, difficult thoughts, challenging emotions, life's inevitable hardships. But suffering is what we add on top of pain when we resist it, fight it, or make it mean something about who we are as a person. You've probably experienced this yourself. Maybe you had a difficult conversation with someone you care about. The initial hurt or confusion, that's pain, and it's natural. But then your mind starts spinning. Why did they say that? What did I do wrong? This always happens to me. I'm terrible at relationships. Now, you're not just dealing with the original difficulty. Section 5. You're drowning in layers of mental commentary. Huineng learned that he could feel disappointed about his meditation without becoming a disappointing person. He could notice anxiety without becoming an anxious person. He could experience confusion without becoming a confused person. But this was only the beginning of his transformation. Because the next day, Master Dogen gave him an even stranger assignment, one that would teach him why welcoming difficult thoughts is actually the fastest way to freedom from them. The next morning, Master Dogen found Huineng sitting peacefully in the meditation hall, no longer fighting the constant stream of thoughts that flowed through his mind. But the master wasn't finished with his teaching. He sat down beside the young monk and said something that made Huineng's blood run cold. "Today, I want you to invite your worst fears to join you in meditation." Huineng's eyes snapped open. "Master, that goes against everything I've been taught about meditation. Shouldn't I be trying to cultivate peaceful thoughts?" The master smiled knowingly. "Tell me, young monk, how well has avoiding your fears worked so far? Do they disappear when you push them away, or do they grow stronger in the shadows?" Think about your own experience for a moment. What happens when you try not to think about something that worries you? Maybe it's a health concern, a relationship issue, or anxiety about your future. The harder you push these thoughts away, the more persistently they knock on the door of your awareness, don't they? Reluctantly, Huineng closed his eyes, and instead of trying to create a peaceful mind, he opened the floodgates. Immediately, his greatest fear appeared. What if I'm not good enough to be a monk? Usually, he would push this thought away like shooing a fly. But today, following his master's instruction, he said something revolutionary. "Welcome, fear. Come, sit with me." To his amazement, instead of growing stronger and overwhelming him, the thought seemed to lose some of its power. It was still there, but it no longer felt like an emergency. It was just a thought, sitting quietly in the space of his awareness. Then came another unwelcome visitor. What if I die alone and forgotten? Again, instead of fighting it, he practiced what the Zen masters call radical acceptance. Hello, lonely thought. You can stay as long as you need. This is one of the most counterintuitive teachings in all of Zen Buddhism. What you resist persists, but what you accept transforms. When we fight our thoughts, we give them our energy, our attention, our emotional charge. But when we welcome them without judgment, they begin to dissolve on their own, like salt in water. Hour after hour, Huineng practiced this radical hospitality with his mind. Fear after fear, doubt after doubt, he greeted each unwelcome thought like an old friend he hadn't seen in years. What if my family thinks I'm a failure? What if I'm wasting my life? What if I never find enlightenment? Each time, instead of panic or resistance, he offered the same gentle welcome. Can you imagine doing this with your own fearful thoughts? Right now, what's the worry that you most want to avoid? What if, instead of pushing it away, you said hello to it? What if you acknowledged its presence without believing its story? As the days passed, something miraculous happened to Huineng. His thoughts didn't disappear, but they stopped controlling him. He could have the thought, "I'm not good enough," and simply observe it, like watching a bird land on a branch. The bird doesn't define the tree, and the thought doesn't define the person. Master Dogen explained it this way: your thoughts are like guests in your house. You don't have to serve them dinner or give them the master bedroom, but you also don't have to fight them at the door. Let them come, let them sit for a while, and let them leave when they're ready. This teaching points to something profound about the nature of fear itself. Most of our suffering doesn't come from the actual events in our lives. It comes from our resistance to those events. We suffer not because we have difficult thoughts, but because we believe those thoughts shouldn't be there. Think about a time when you were anxious about something. Wasn't there a layer of anxiety about being anxious? A worry about worrying? This is what Zen calls the second arrow. We get hit by the initial difficulty, and then we shoot ourselves with a second arrow of resistance and self-judgment. Huineng began to understand that his mind was not his enemy. Even his fearful thoughts were not trying to harm him. They were trying to protect him. His worry about not being good enough was his mind's way of trying to motivate him to improve. His fear of dying alone was his heart's way of expressing its deep need for connection. When you start to see your difficult thoughts this way, as misguided attempts at self-protection rather than attacks on your peace, everything changes. You can feel compassion for the part of you that worries instead of anger. You can appreciate your mind's attempt to keep you safe while gently declining its more anxious suggestions. But perhaps the most important thing Huineng learned was the difference between feeling a feeling and becoming that feeling. He could experience anxiety without thinking "I am an anxious person." He could feel sadness without concluding "I am broken." He could notice anger without believing "I am angry." This distinction is everything. Right now, you might be feeling tired, but you are not tiredness itself. You might be experiencing worry, but you are not worry itself. You are the space in which these experiences arise and pass away. You are the sky, and emotions are just weather patterns moving through. As Huineng's practice deepened, he noticed something beautiful happening. The more he welcomed his difficult thoughts, the more space he found for joy, peace, and clarity. It's as if the energy he had been using to fight his inner experience was now available for actually living his life. One evening, as he sat in meditation with a mind full of welcomed thoughts, Master Dogen approached him. "Your practice has matured, young monk. You've learned to make friends with your fears. But now you're ready for the deepest teaching of all. Tomorrow, we're going to explore the thought you've been avoiding your entire life, the one that brought you to this monastery in the first place." Huineng felt his stomach tighten. He knew exactly which thought the master meant. It was the memory that haunted his dreams, the pain so deep he had run hundreds of miles to escape it. But now he understood something he hadn't before. Running from pain doesn't make it disappear. It only ensures that the pain will follow you wherever you go. The next part of his journey would teach him why the cave we fear to enter holds the treasure we seek. 3 months into his training, Huineng had learned to welcome most of his thoughts like old friends. But there was one memory that still sent him fleeing from the meditation hall, the real reason he had become a monk. It lurked in the shadows of his mind like a wounded animal, and every time it stirred, he would find urgent chores to distract himself. Years earlier, Huineng had been a simple rice farmer in a small village. He had a beloved wife named Mei and a daughter, little Ling, who was the light of his world. Their life was humble, but filled with laughter. Every evening, Ling would run to greet him as he returned from the fields, her tiny arms wrapping around his legs as she chattered about her day. But one terrible winter, a plague swept through their village like wildfire. Despite his desperate efforts to save them, gathering herbs, seeking help from distant healers, praying to every deity he knew, both his wife and daughter died in his arms within days of each other. The guilt and grief were so overwhelming that he abandoned his farm and fled to the monastery, hoping that becoming a monk would somehow wash away his pain. The thought that haunted him was simple but devastating. I failed them. I should have done more. Their deaths were my fault. Can you feel the weight of that belief? Maybe you carry something similar, a memory, a mistake, a loss that you've never fully allowed yourself to feel. Perhaps it's the relationship that ended, the opportunity you missed, the words you wish you could take back. These deep wounds often drive our overthinking more than we realize. Whenever this memory arose during meditation, Huineng would jump up and busy himself with sweeping, cooking, or copying sutras. He told himself he was being productive, but Master Dogen saw through his escape tactics. The wise teacher had been watching, waiting for the right moment to address this elephant in the room. One evening, as the sun painted the mountains in shades of gold, Master Dogen sat beside Huineng in the meditation hall. The young monk was fidgeting, unable to settle. "You've learned to welcome small fears," the master said gently, but you're still running from the big one. Tonight, we're going to sit with your deepest pain. Huineng's whole body tensed. Master, I can't. It's too much. If I let myself feel it fully, I might never recover. That's exactly why we must, Dogen replied with infinite compassion. In Zen, we have a saying, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. What you avoid controls you. What you face with love transforms you. This teaching points to one of the most profound insights in all of Buddhism. Our greatest suffering often comes not from painful experiences themselves, but from our refusal to fully feel them. When we run from pain, it follows us everywhere. It shows up disguised as anxiety about the future, depression about the past, or a vague sense that something is always wrong. But when we turn toward our pain with the same radical acceptance Huineng had learned to offer his fears, something miraculous happens. The pain transforms, not because it goes away, but because we stop adding resistance to it. Think about physical pain for a moment. When you have a headache and you tense up against it, fighting it, what happens? The pain usually gets worse. But when you breathe into it, relax around it, the same headache becomes more manageable. Emotional pain works the same way. Together, master and student sat in meditation. Dogen instructed Huineng to bring the memory of his family to mind, not to analyze it or fix it, but simply to feel it fully. When the painful images arose, instead of fleeing, Huineng breathed into them. He felt the grief in his chest like a heavy stone. He felt the guilt in his stomach like burning coals. He felt the ache of loss throughout his entire body. Don't try to fix it, Master Dogen whispered. Don't try to understand it. Don't make it mean anything about who you are. Just feel it completely. Let it move through you like weather through the sky. For the first time in years, Huineng allowed himself to fully grieve. He cried for his wife's gentle laughter that would never again fill their home. He wept for his daughter's future, the woman she would never become, the grandchildren he would never hold. He sobbed for the life that was lost, the love that was cut short. But something extraordinary happened as he sat there, fully present with his pain. Instead of destroying him, the grief began to soften. It was as if holding it with complete acceptance allowed it to finally move through him instead of getting stuck. The pain was still there, but it no longer felt like it would kill him. What's your deepest pain? What grief have you been carrying alone? What guilt or regret do you revisit in the quiet hours of the night? Notice how much energy you spend trying not to feel it fully. Notice how this avoidance might be feeding the very overthinking that brought you here tonight. Your pain is not your enemy, Master Dogen explained as Huineng's tears began to slow. It's your teacher. It shows you how deeply you can love. The measure of your grief is the measure of your capacity for connection. Don't let anyone tell you to get over it quickly. Honor it. Let it teach you. This is the Zen principle of embracing what is. Not embracing it because you like it, but because resistance to reality is the root of all suffering. When we stop fighting what has already happened, even painful things, we discover that we are much stronger and more resilient than we imagined. Over the following weeks, Huineng learned to visit his grief regularly, like tending a garden. Some days the pain was sharp and fresh. Other days it was a gentle ache, like the tenderness after a wound has healed. But it no longer controlled his life. He could feel love for his lost family without being crushed by guilt. He could remember their laughter without being destroyed by their absence. One morning, as he sat in meditation with his grief held gently in his heart, Huineng experienced something that would change his understanding of everything. As he breathed with his pain, he began to notice something else, a presence that was holding the grief. Something that was aware of the sadness, but not made of sadness. Something that could witness his thoughts and feelings without being disturbed by them. Who or what was this witness? Master Dogen smiled when Huineng described this experience. Now you're ready for the deepest teaching of all. You've learned to welcome your thoughts and embrace your pain. But have you ever wondered who it is that does the welcoming? Who is the one who observes all these mental and emotional storms yet remains untouched by them? This question would unlock the final door to freedom from overthinking. Because the secret wasn't just in changing his relationship to thoughts, it was in discovering who he really was beneath all the thinking. 3 days after Huineng's breakthrough with his grief, Master Dogen presented him with a question that seemed impossible to answer. Who is the one who worries? Huineng looked confused. What do you mean, Master? I am the one who worries. When I have anxious thoughts about my future or guilt about my past, it's me experiencing them. The old master's eyes sparkled with mischief. Show me this you. Where exactly is this one who thinks and worries? Can you point to it? Does it have a color, a shape, a location? This wasn't just philosophical wordplay. Master Dogen was pointing Huineng toward one of the most liberating discoveries in all of Zen Buddhism. He was helping him see that the self we think we are, the one who gets caught up in endless thinking, might not be as solid or real as we imagine. Take a moment right now to look for yourself. Where exactly are you? Are you in your head, behind your eyes? Are you in your chest, where you feel emotions? Are you spread throughout your body? The more closely you look, the harder it becomes to find this solid self that claims ownership of all your thoughts and feelings. Huineng spent days contemplating this riddle. He would sit in meditation and try to locate the me that was meditating. When a worry arose, he would search for the one who was worried. When happiness bubbled up, he would look for the one who was happy. But the more he searched, the more mysterious it became. One afternoon, as he sat by the monastery's small pond, watching koi fish swim in lazy circles, Master Dogen joined him. The teacher picked up a stone and threw it into the water, creating ripples that spread across the surface. Tell me, young monk, are the ripples separate from the water? Huineng watched the concentric circles expand and fade. No, master. The ripples are just water taking different forms. They appear and disappear, but they're not separate from the pond. Exactly, smiled Dogen. Your thoughts and emotions are like those ripples. They arise in the pond of awareness, create patterns for a while, then settle back into stillness. But we make the mistake of thinking we are the ripples instead of recognizing that we are the pond itself. This is the heart of the Zen teaching on anatta or no self. It doesn't mean you don't exist. It means the you that you think you are, the solid, separate self that owns your thoughts and must solve all your problems, is more like a mirage than a reality. Think about your own experience of overthinking. Who is doing the thinking? You might say, well, I am. But have you ever noticed that thoughts just appear? You don't manufacture them in some mental factory. They arise spontaneously, like bubbles in champagne. So who or what is the real author of your thoughts? Huineng began to experiment with this perspective. When anxiety arose, instead of thinking I am anxious, he would observe, there is anxiety happening. When sadness appeared, instead of I am sad, he would notice sadness is present. This small shift in language created a huge shift in his experience. But Master Dogen wasn't finished with his teaching. He led Huineng to an even deeper discovery. One evening, as they sat in meditation together, the Master whispered, "Notice the awareness that is aware of your thoughts. Is that awareness worried? Is that awareness anxious? Or is it simply present, like space that holds all things without being disturbed by them?" This was the breakthrough moment. Huineng suddenly realized that there were two distinct aspects to his experience. There were the contents of his awareness, thoughts, emotions, sensations, perceptions. And there was the awareness itself, the open, spacious knowing that observed all these changing phenomena. The contents were always changing. Thoughts came and went. Emotions rose and fell. But the awareness that knew about these changes remained constant, like the screen in a movie theater that remains unaffected whether the film shows comedy or tragedy. Can you sense this in your own experience right now? Notice that you are aware of reading these words. Notice that you're aware of any sounds around you. Notice that you're aware of your breathing. What is this awareness? Is it thinking? Or is it simply present, knowing whatever appears without being changed by it? Huineng began to identify less with the worried thoughts and more with the awareness that observed them. When his mind would start spinning about the future, he would gently remind himself, I am not these thoughts. I am the awareness in which thoughts appear. And awareness itself has never worried about anything. This shift was revolutionary. The worried self that had driven him to overthinking began to feel less solid, less real. It was like discovering that the monster you'd been afraid of was just shadows on the wall. The thoughts still came, but they no longer had someone to stick to. Master Dogen explained it this way: when you believe you are the thinker, every thought feels personal. Every worry becomes your worry. Every fear becomes your fear. But when you recognize yourself as awareness itself, thoughts become like clouds passing through an open sky. The sky is never disturbed by the weather. Think about how this might change your relationship with overthinking. What if your anxious thoughts were not yours personally, but just mental weather passing through the open space of awareness? What if you could watch them the way you watch clouds, with interest perhaps, but without feeling responsible for them? Over the following days, Huineng practiced this new way of being. Instead of trying to control his thoughts, he simply rested as the awareness that observed them. Instead of fighting difficult emotions, he remained as the space in which they appeared and dissolved. He discovered that awareness itself was naturally peaceful, naturally free. But perhaps the most beautiful discovery was this: when he stopped trying to fix the worried self, the worrying began to fade on its own. It's as if the mental spinning had been fueled by the belief that there was someone who needed to be saved from it. When that someone dissolved into open awareness, the spinning lost its energy source. One morning, as Huineng sat in meditation with a completely quiet mind, Master Dogen approached him with a smile. "You have discovered who you really are beneath all the thinking," the teacher said. "But now I want to show you something even more practical. This awareness you've found is not separate from your body. There's a bridge between the spacious mind and the breathing body that can anchor you in peace whenever thinking tries to carry you away." What Huineng was about to learn would give him a practical tool he could use anywhere, anytime his mind started to race. The morning after Huineng's realization about his true nature, Master Dogen led him to a quiet grove behind the monastery where ancient pine trees swayed gently in the mountain breeze. The air was crisp and filled with the scent of morning dew. But instead of sitting in their usual meditation posture, the master did something unexpected. He lay down on the soft earth and gestured for Huineng to do the same. "Young monk," the master said, "you have discovered that you are not your thoughts, but the awareness that observes them. This is profound wisdom. But wisdom without practical application is like a beautiful flower that gives no fruit. Today, I want to show you the most intimate teacher you will ever have, one that has been with you every moment since your first cry as a baby." Huineng looked puzzled. "Master, I don't understand. What teacher are you speaking of?" Dogen smiled and placed his hand on his chest. "Your breath, dear student. It has been patiently waiting for you to notice it. Most people live their entire lives taking 20,000 breaths a day without ever truly meeting this constant companion. Right now, as you listen to these words, notice your own breath. You don't have to change it or control it. Just become aware of it. Feel the air entering your nostrils. Notice the gentle pause before it flows back out. This simple awareness is the doorway back to peace whenever your mind begins to race. But this isn't just about breathing techniques, Dogen continued. This is about discovering the wisdom that your body has always carried. Your breath knows things your mind has forgotten. It knows how to be present. It knows how to let go. It knows how to find rhythm in chaos. As they lay there beneath the pine trees, Master Dogen guided Huineng through a profound exploration. Close your eyes and follow your breath as if you're meeting it for the first time. Notice that you cannot breathe in the past. Yesterday's breath is gone. You cannot breathe in the future. Tomorrow's breath hasn't arrived. The breath can only happen now. This was a revelation for Huineng. His mind had spent months racing between memories and plans, regrets and anxieties. But his breath had remained steadfastly present, patiently teaching him the art of being here. How had he missed such an obvious teacher? When your mind starts spinning with worries about the future, Dogen explained, your breath gently calls you home to this moment. When you get lost in guilt about the past, your breath reminds you that life is happening right now. It's like having a wise friend who never argues, never judges, but simply demonstrates the art of presence. But there was something even deeper that Master Dogen wanted Huineng to discover. Watch your breath closely, he instructed. Notice that you don't actually breathe. Breathing happens to you. You don't have to remember to inhale or decide when to exhale. Some deeper intelligence is breathing you. As Huineng became absorbed in this observation, he felt something profound shift. If he wasn't even in control of his own breathing, the most basic function of life, then what else was he not in control of? What if the same intelligence that breathed him was also thinking through him? What if his thoughts, like his breath, were simply arising naturally without anyone really controlling them? This realization brought enormous relief. If thoughts were like breath, automatic, natural processes, then he didn't need to manage them any more than he needed to micromanage his heartbeat. He could trust the same wisdom that kept his body functioning to also allow his mind to find its natural rhythm. Can you feel this in your own experience? As you breathe naturally right now, notice how little effort it requires. Your body knows exactly how much air you need. It adjusts automatically to your activity level, your emotional state, your environment. What if you could trust your mind the same way? What if thinking, like breathing, could find its own natural balance without constant interference? Master Dogen taught Huineng a practice that would serve him for the rest of his life. Whenever your mind becomes agitated, he said, don't fight it. Simply return your attention to your breath. Not as an escape from thinking, but as a return to the present moment where peace already exists. But this isn't about using the breath to suppress thoughts. That would be just another form of resistance. Instead, the breath becomes an anchor in the storm. Thoughts can rage like wind and rain, but you remain grounded in the simple reality of breathing. Over the following weeks, Huineng practiced this breath awareness in all his daily activities. While sweeping the temple floors, he would feel his breath moving in rhythm with his motions. While preparing meals, he would notice how his breathing naturally synchronized with his chopping and stirring. While walking in the mountains, he would feel his breath and footsteps creating a meditation in motion. The most remarkable discovery was that when he was fully present with his breath, overthinking became impossible. Not because he was suppressing thoughts, but because he was so absorbed in the immediate reality of breathing that there was no mental energy left over for spinning stories about the past or future. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset paint the mountains in brilliant oranges and purples, Huineng turned to his master. "I understand now why you called the breath my most intimate teacher. It's always here, always present, always pointing me back to peace. But Master, how do I carry this wisdom into my life beyond the monastery? How do I remember these teachings when the world becomes noisy again?" Master Dogen smiled, knowing his student was ready for the final integration. "Tomorrow, my dear monk, we will explore how all these teachings weave together into a way of living that can bring peace to any circumstance. Because the ultimate goal is not to escape life, but to live it fully awake." As the seasons changed at the monastery, Master Dogen could see that Huineng had transformed from the restless young monk who had arrived months earlier. His eyes held a quiet depth, his movements carried a natural grace, and most remarkably, his mind had found the peace it had been seeking. But the master knew that the true test of any teaching is not how well it works in the shelter of a monastery, but how it serves you in the midst of ordinary life. One morning, Master Dogen announced that Huineng would be leaving the monastery to return to the world. The young monk felt a flutter of anxiety, his first strong emotional reaction in weeks. "Master," he said, "what if I lose everything I've learned here? What if the noise of the world drowns out this peace?" The wise teacher chuckled softly. "That very worry shows you still don't fully understand what you've discovered. Peace is not something fragile that must be protected from life. True peace is what remains when you stop protecting yourself from life." As you listen to these words right now, perhaps you're feeling something similar. Maybe you're wondering how these ancient teachings could possibly help you tomorrow when you face your actual challenges, your work stress, your relationship difficulties, your financial worries, your health concerns. Let me show you how Huineng learned to weave these insights into a practical way of living. On Huineng's final day at the monastery, Master Dogen gave him what he called the 5 remembrances, simple truths to carry into any situation where his mind might begin to race. First, remember that thoughts are like weather. They come and go naturally. You don't have to fight the storm or chase the clouds. When anxious thoughts arise about your job, your relationships, or your future, simply notice. There's stormy weather in the mind right now. Like all weather, it will pass. Second, remember that resistance creates persistence. Whatever you push away grows stronger. If you wake up at 3 in the morning with your mind spinning, don't make it wrong. Welcome the sleeplessness like an old friend. Say hello to the worry. Often, the simple act of acceptance is what allows the mind to finally settle. Can you practice this right now? If there's any tension in your body or restlessness in your mind as you prepare for sleep, try greeting it kindly instead of fighting it. Notice how even this small shift changes your relationship to whatever you're experiencing. Third, remember that you are not the thinker, but the awareness that observes thinking. When challenging thoughts arise, step back into the spacious awareness that knows about them. You might say silently, "I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough," rather than believing I am not good enough. This creates space between you and your mental patterns. Fourth, remember your breath as your constant teacher. No matter where you are or what's happening, your breath is always available to bring you back to the present moment. You don't need special techniques or perfect conditions. Simply feeling the air enter and leave your body is enough to interrupt any mental spiral. And fifth, remember that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Don't spend your life running from difficult emotions. When grief, fear, or anger arise, breathe into them with compassion. They are not enemies to be defeated, but messengers carrying important information about what matters to you. As Huineng prepared to leave the monastery, he realized these weren't just meditation techniques. They were a completely different way of relating to his inner experience. Instead of being at war with his mind, he had learned to live in partnership with it. Instead of demanding that life be comfortable, he had developed the capacity to find peace within any circumstance. But perhaps the most profound shift was this. Huineng no longer saw overthinking as a personal failure. He understood it as a natural human tendency that arises when we forget our true nature. The mind spins when it believes it must solve everything, control everything, understand everything. But when we remember that we are the open awareness in which all experiences arise and pass away, the urgency dissolves. As you prepare for sleep tonight, you can practice this same remembering. Instead of trying to force your mind to be quiet, simply rest as the awareness that notices whatever is happening. If thoughts arise, let them. If emotions surface, welcome them. If your body feels restless, accept that too. The goal is not to create perfect conditions for sleep. The goal is to be so accepting of whatever is happening that peace can emerge naturally. Like a clear mountain lake that reflects the sky perfectly when the wind stops stirring its surface, your natural tranquility will reveal itself when you stop agitating your mind with resistance. Years later, when Huineng became a teacher himself, students would ask him, "What is the secret to ending overthinking?" His answer was always the same. There is no secret technique. There is only the gradual remembering of what you have always been beneath all the mental noise, pure, open, peaceful awareness. Tonight, As you let these stories settle into your consciousness, remember that you are not trying to become someone who doesn't think. You are simply recognizing that you have always been the space in which thinking happens. And that space has never been disturbed by even the loudest mental storm. Let your breathing deepen naturally. Let your body sink into whatever is supporting it. And prepare to discover what Huineng found in his final moments at the monastery, and of the peace you've been seeking was never missing. It was just hidden beneath layers of unnecessary struggle. The final teaching awaits you in the silence between thoughts. On his final evening at the monastery, as Huineng sat in meditation one last time, something extraordinary happened. All the teachings he had learned about welcoming thoughts, embracing pain, discovering his true nature, finding peace in the breath, suddenly wove together into a single, seamless understanding. He realized that he had never actually been broken. The restless mind that had driven him to seek peace was itself a perfect expression of his Buddha nature trying to wake up. Even his overthinking had been a form of seeking, a way his deepest wisdom was calling him home to himself. As you rest now, let this same recognition dawn in you. Every anxious thought you've ever had was your inner wisdom trying to protect what you love. Every sleepless night was your soul's way of saying, there's something here that needs attention. You have never been doing this wrong. Feel your body melting into the surface beneath you. Notice how your breath naturally deepens as you let go of trying to control anything. If thoughts arise, greet them like old friends and let them pass. If emotions surface, breathe into them with compassion. You are not falling asleep tonight. You are falling awake to your original nature, the vast, peaceful awareness that has always been here, silently holding all your experiences with infinite patience. Just as Huineng discovered, the peace you seek is not something you must create. It's something you must stop covering up with unnecessary struggle. Tonight, let the struggle end. Let the fight with your own mind dissolve. Rest now in the silence that knows all sounds. Rest in the stillness that holds all movement. Rest in the awareness that observes all thoughts without being disturbed by any of them. This is Echoes of Dharma, and you are home. Sleep well.